This is RBC Television.
This is RBC.
You are listening to RBC Radio 1.
Good evening.
Welcome to RBC World News.
3, 2, 1.
We have completely changed our looks, but our goals haven't changed. A trusted news source with high-quality stories that matter to us all. This is RBC News at 6.
RBC News at 6.
This is RBC Television.
Have already received the ballots, and they have till end of this month to make the decision. Today's debate will cover a wide range of topics including tax, housing, health, employment, education, diplomacy, immigration. Representatives will receive 3 minutes to make their opening statement, 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer questions from me and the audiences. They will have a chance to ask each other questions and answer them with 1 minute and 30 seconds. Oh. There was no audio. Sorry. Right, I will redo my speech. Please ignore what I just done. It is not a Roblox debate without technical issues. So, good evening. Welcome again to RBC Spotlight, where we put topics that matters to you under the spotlight. I wish to thank Johnny Mester, President of the RBC, and all other staff for making this debate possible, and the RBC Radio 1 staff, who is also streaming this. Today, we are glad to invite Ben Woods from Glasgow Conservative and Unionist Party representing Robert Jenrick, and Jack Kenway-Smith from Melton and Syston Conservative representing Kemi Badenoch. Ben Wood sits in the Glasgow Conservative Executive and works as an election agent. Jack himself sits in the executive as well and stood in the local borough election. For the sake of clarity, I will explain to the audience about the backstory. On the 4th of July general election, Labour won by a landslide majority and the Conservative Party in the UK faced a historic defeat, losing 251 seats. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak resigned while the election process for the next Tory leader is triggered after the total number of candidates is reduced from 6 to 2 by Tory MPs, eliminating James Cleverly, Mel Stride, Priti Patel and Tom Tugendhat. It is now up to the members to elect the next leader from the remaining finalists. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick and former Women and Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch. Members have already received their ballot and they have until the end of this month to make the decision. Today's debate will cover a wide range of topics including tax, housing, health, employment, education, diplomacy, immigration and the CCHQ. Representative will first receive 3 minutes to make their opening statement, 1.5 minutes to answer questions from me and the audiences. They will have a chance to ask each other questions and answer them within 1.5 minutes, and at last a 3-minute closing statement. Representatives are asked to avoid talking over each other and keep their voices at the right volume and in good clarity. The rule is don't deafen us or make us feel we are deaf, as this is an online debate, and if we do not do that, the audio would go absolutely lunatic. So let's start. Let's start with Ben Wood for Robert Jenrick. It is your time to make your opening statement. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to Jay, to Ryan and the whole team for hosting this debate, and thank you also to Jack for agreeing to debate the future of our party and our country. Just over 2 years ago, in the summer of 2022, I took part in on a debate over on what was then Twitter during the parliamentary stages of another of our frequent leadership contests in this party, where I was making the argument for MPs to put Kemi into the final two. Is the audio all right, Jay? Sorry. Yep. I was making the argument for Kemi to be in the final two and for members to support her. So why the change of heart? Well, it's clear that Kemi retains many of her key strengths. The ability, like Rob, to articulate a vision, albeit unlike Rob, without a clear plan to realise it. A communication style that, like Rob, grants her cut through, although, unlike Rob, one that lends itself to numerous and damaging gaffes. And also, like Rob, a passionate advocate for genuine conservatism, albeit one that, unlike Rob, sometimes fails to identify the key areas required for electoral success. The reason for my change of heart, therefore, is simply that while Rob matches Kemi's strengths, he does so without her shortcomings. Jenrick has a vision, not too dissimilar from Kemi's, I must add, but he has the plan, the policies, and a roadmap to realise that. He not only has the cut through, but he does so through policy rather than platitudes. And he is passionate, not just when it comes to ideology, but when it comes to providing real world political solutions too. Kemi argues, as I'm sure Jack will try to argue tonight, that we have loads of time to look inwards and debate with ourselves over policy during the course of this parliament. But I'm afraid to say this is a delusion. To win the next election, we cannot assign the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years to inwardly debating policy. We need a plan today, not a premise of one tomorrow. From legal to illegal immigration, from NHS reform to the defence of the realm, from house building to taxation, Rob's key policies are awaiting your mandate. In contrast, what are Kemi's key policies on these and other issues? What is her plan? We simply don't know. And is it that she has a plan but doesn't want you, the members, to know it, at least not until you have voted? Or is it that she simply doesn't have one? Neither of these answers demonstrates the conviction she is so desperate to associate herself and her campaign with, and neither of these answers is a credible basis to lead the party. Leadership requires just that, for you to lead, and to lead requires not just a vision of where to get to, but a roadmap of how to get there. Tonight, I'll be advocating for you, the membership, to vote for that roadmap, to vote for Jenrick as our next leader and hopefully our next Prime Minister. Thank you. That's
Thank you, Ben.
Jay.
Thank you, Ben. Now, Jack Smith. Sorry for pronouncing your candidate very incorrectly. It is Badenoch. So, Jack Smith for Kemi Badenoch. It is your time to make your opening statement. 3 minutes, sir.
Well, obviously, myself and many other members, we're all very hopeful that the public will soon get used to pronouncing her name, because she'll be leader of the opposition and hopefully prime minister, maybe in the long run, of course. However, this is a leadership election, a party leadership election, general election, and it definitely isn't a presidential election about one candidate to head the government. It's not that sort of election. It's the election to lead our party about around 3-4 years ahead of the next general election. Yes, we need to be prepared and we need to hit the ground running, but we are a political party. We're not a cult. We're not all about one person. And Kemi recognises this. She stands out against all the candidates because her campaign is named Renewal 2030. There's been other all of our candidates have had fine qualities, including Robert. However, has demonstrated she has the ability to appeal to different people across the board, and she's been trying to be constructive. Yes, it has been reported that she has had some gaffes, but these are more media misrepresentations. And to be honest, I don't think we should be letting The Guardian tell us who our leader is, because chances are they don't want our best candidate to be leader. Hence why they've been hounding Kemi. Now, Kemi is, I consider, a rare gem in British politics. It's not just myself, experienced political veterans in the other place and in the House of Commons recognise that leadership candidates like her are very rare to come by. She has a special set of qualities, and the cherry on the icing on the cake is that she is that her own personal backstory is very inspiring. But talking about her and what she can offer, she's shown that she can deliver methodically in government. As the Business and Trade Secretary, she thinks about things practically and not rushing things through. We saw this with the retained EU law bill. She got a lot of criticism for what she did, pulling it to like take a different approach. The thing is, the most important objective of it got done, like removing the ECJ primacy over law, converted them all into British law, and we can change them as we go along. Now, like I say, this she wants to bring the party with her. So she's got this idea of like setting up policy commissions where it involve different people across the board to explore different ideas. However, she's got some ideas of herself already. Now, what she is doing in this leadership campaign is setting out broad guiding principles, and our policies will flow naturally from then. So,
Thank you. Now it is time for a question from myself. Each candidate will have a maximum of 1.5 minutes to answer each question. However, do be mindful of time. On condition that they keep the answers short and easier questions, I'll give them a courtesy extra time for the harder ones. So, first, for many young people, housing. Building Society Association report suggests home ownership amongst younger people has been in decline over the past 20 years. That is under our government as well. And describe the housing market broken for the first-time buyers. What would your candidate do to support first-time buyers and fix the housing market? Let's start with Jack.
So, both of our final two candidates have experience working in the housing department. Of course, Robert Jenrick was the minister responsible, the Secretary of State, the Principal Secretary of State, and he unveiled a very what I'm told is a very fabulous white paper. But it was a shame that we were unable to get our Conservative councillors on board with this proposal. I'm hoping, and lots of us are hoping, that Kemi she'll use her talents, get people on board, and she is very diligent. She's a listener. With local development plans in her own constituency, she hasn't opposed them. She knows though that we to look at the details of plans and look at ways we can adequate compromises to get those who have NIMBY tendencies on board, and everyone wins. We build our homes. Home ownership is key, and we need to get our young people on board. I mean, how many of us haven't got homes yet? But yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Can we have Ben for Robert Jemrick now on Building Society Association believe that homeownership is in decline for young people and the housing market broken for first-time buyers? What would your candidate do to support those first-time buyers?
Yeah, so it's obviously a really important area, and the ultimate key of being a conservative is this understanding of property ownership, of this core drive towards home ownership. And it's one of the key things that signals you out as a conservative in terms of voting conservative is, do you own your own home? One of the key metrics. So it's really important for the country, and it's also important for the party. Now, just want to pick up on something that Jack mentioned, which was he hopes that Kemi is going to drive towards um, policies that increase home ownership rates. But that's exactly the point. And I'm going to be a little bit like a broken record tonight because he hopes. And the reason why he hopes and the reason why he doesn't know is because Kemi hasn't set out a single policy on home ownership. So what is Robert's policies on home ownership? Well, the big one is what he wrote in that white paper that Jack just mentioned a moment ago, which was zonal in urban areas. They've tried this on the continent and we know it works. It means that which means that development doesn't have to be approved on an individual basis, you can do it on a zonal basis. And that's his ambition, to have the largest program of urban densification in 50 years. But that's the difference. It's very easy to say that you want the largest program of urban densification. It's very easy to say that Kemi's going to support home ownership, but the problem is how is she going to do it? And the answer is that you don't know, because I don't know, and none of us know, because she hasn't laid it out. Robert has. There's a very good white paper. I encourage you to Google it after this call. If you're interested in housing, read through it and read through the zoning proposals that he has laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Very well kept time. Now, a short question. Would you describe your candidates as a Yimby, NIMBY, or banana? Jack, for Kemi Badenoch.
Well, Kemi's a Yimby, but she also knows she's got to get local communities on board and compromises have to be made. But in her own constituency, despite some local opposition within their own conservative group, perhaps she never opposed any of the development schemes. She's worked constructively, and she recognises the importance of increasing own ownership, and a big part of that is obviously supplying and making it easy to save deposits and policies and initiatives to excite young people to feel hope and aspiration.
Thank you. Let's keep it quick as well. Ben, would you say Robert Jemrick is a Yimby, NIMBY, or banana?
I would absolutely say he's a YIMBY. Now, what we've seen with this Labour government in their housing targets is they've shifted them from urban areas in order to save the blushes of their Labour failing mayors in London and elsewhere, and they've moved them to rural areas. This doesn't make sense. Clearly, we need to go back to what I was saying earlier, have a zonal plan, which is already ready to go if we elect Robert Jemrick, to push Keir Starmer on that at the first PMQs that he's leader, in order to go back to urban redensification. That's where the facilities are. That's where the roads, the networks, the hospitals, the schools, everything else is. That's where we need to be focusing our building. So not building anything anywhere, but absolutely yes, prioritizing building and construction in our urban areas.
Thank you. For the audience that's wondering what banana means, it means build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. So that's what banana is. Tom Duganat called it, it must be Liberal Democrats because it's yellow and disgusting. And okay, the second quite important issue when it comes to young people, education. During the general election campaign, the Conservative pledged to increase number of apprenticeships by 100,000. Would your candidate stick to this promise in opposition? And what is your candidate's policy on education more broadly? This is a difficult question, so I'll allow you more time. Let's start with Ben Woods for Robert Jemrick. How will Robert Jemrick do?
Yes, so you won't be surprised that Robert Jemrick, unlike Kemi on this, has actually laid out specific policies. And I'm sure we'll hear what we hope that Kemi will do, but we actually know what Robert is going to do. And we're going to have to keep coming back to this policy. So you talked about apprenticeship. So Robert Jemrick, we have a lot of universities that are effectively indoctrination factories in the UK. These underperform. They don't result in good high quality degrees that result in better wages or better jobs. And these receive a huge amount of public money. So Robert Jenrick has said that those underperforming courses and underperforming universities should have their money withdrawn, and that should be changed to that pot of money should be spent on apprenticeships. Now, this is important because what we got wrong under Elizabeth Truss is we announced money, but we didn't say where it was coming from. So Robert Jenrick's been very clear where this money will come from. It will be coming from those indoctrination factories of those failing universities. You also talked about education more broadly. One of the key detriments, one of the key poor things that we did over the past 14 years is we didn't reverse Labour's ban on expanding on new grammar schools. Grammar schools are a brilliant piece of social mobility. Unlike Kemi, who hasn't made a firm policy commitment on this, Robert Jenrick has made a firm policy commitment on this to lift the ban on grammar schools to get social mobility moving again, and that key aspects of conservative aspiration.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Jack, for Kemi Badenoch, how will Kemi Badenoch deal with the issues of education?
Okay, education is something what is Kemi's been very passionate and done a lot of research on and spoke about for many years. There's even an old YouTube video where she does a TED talk on it. Well, basically, she's spoken on the issue of grammar schools. She thinks it should be left to a local issue. She says she don't think we should be putting things like bans on grammar schools, but lift it and allow like local authorities to send people to grammar schools and stuff. Or that's an issue. She would get away. One policy she has definitely announced, and which most of the party can get behind, is lifting the envy tax on education. The politics of envy, which is one about leveling down. Kemi's about creating opportunities. She feels passionate about this, and she brings people on board. It's all right announcing policies in a leadership election. You don't know if you're going to be able to deliver them in a few years' time. Get your own party on board.
Thank you, Jack. Well, now both candidates are considered to be on the right wing of the party. That include on the question when it comes to immigration. So on immigration and the ECHR, under the past Conservative government, we had a record number of net immigration, and we faced a crisis of illegal immigration when it comes to channel crossing. What is your candidate's approach on illegal immigration and legal immigration more broadly? Let's start with Jack Smith for Kemi Badenoch.
Kemi was someone who looks at things practically. It's a mindset here, and she knows that circumstances change over the time. But what she is clear is that net migration numbers have to go on a downward trajectory. Now, how we do this, getting the right personnel to enforce these things, this is all goes back to systemic issues as well. I mean, she's also got an emphasis on obviously allowing us to have a multiracial society, multi-ethnic and that, but one where it's got a common cultural identity, where and one of more of an assimilationist approach rather than a segregationist salad bowl multiculturalist approach. What this country has been subjected to, which isn't about helping with social cohesion, and it's so yes, it's about how we do it. And Kemi did a detailed booklet on the bureaucratic class and so many of our issues. It all comes back to this. In order to deliver for the British people, we've got to sort out these issues with the public sector and the state, the civil service, Whitehall, the Quongos. It's been a straitjacket on Conservative ministers and has hindered their ability to deliver for the British people.
Thank you, Jack. Now, for Robert Jenrick, Ben Woods, how would your candidates approach on illegal immigration and legal immigration more broadly?
Okay, so the first thing to state that these are two very different issues, and they obviously get conflated quite a lot, but I'm going to take each individually in turn. I'm also, before I do, going to be the broken record again, and I would just remind the audience that when they listen to Jack there, they will have noted that not a single policy was talked about, and that's because Kemi has not said a single policy. She said what she's against, and we'll talk about some of those policies which she opposes, but she hasn't said what for. And that booklet actually that he referenced, I read through that, and again, you can read through that about 100 pages and not a single policy. And that's exactly the point. Whether it's housing, whether it's education, whether it's immigration, we need a plan, not just rhetoric. So when we come to legal immigration, first of all, we need a cap. But crucially, this is the difference. In 2010, David Cameron promised a cap, but the cap he was talking about was only in rhetorical terms. He was only talking about as an aspiration, a target. Robert Jenrick's has been very clear. This would be a legal cap passed in Parliament. So you can look constituents in the eye. You can say this is legally being passed. It is now under British law, and we cannot break it. It means that it lands us back credibility on the issue of legal migration, which we have lost over the past 14 years. On the issue of illegal immigration, he has stated two things. First of all, the issue that he resigned from government over, which was the Rwanda scheme. This was a legislation that he is proposing to bring back, but strengthened, including the ability to block spurious claims on human rights grounds to avoid deportation of illegal immigrants. But he's also, and this is the key thing, promised to leave the European Court of Human Rights. Now, in the debate on GB News yesterday, Kemi made a false claim. She claimed that France removed 70% of illegal immigrants whilst being in the ECHR. The actual figure is less than 30%. Not even a third. And so this is really a crucial point. And I hope that we talk a bit more about the ECHR, because it's a very complex topic, and one that's due a few more minutes of both of our time, I'm sure. But that's Robert Jenrick's policies and actual substance, as well as his rhetoric, on both illegal and legal immigration.
Well, let's answer a yes or no question, Ben. Does your candidate believe in leaving ECHR? And can I have a short answer about why?
Okay, so I think I just answered that. Yes, and the reason why is because there are terrorists and foreign criminals in Britain today, because we are a member. When it was set up, like when the EU was set up, it was never intended to become this quasi-political body that it is today. In order to deport these foreign criminals and foreign terrorists, we need to leave the ECHR and institute a British Bill of Rights. This is a very clear dividing line in this election. Do you want a cap on legal migration? Yes or no? If yes, vote Robert Jenrick. Do you want to leave the ECHR and deport foreign terrorists and foreign criminals? If yes, you have to vote Robert Jenrick. Kemi has come out strongly against both of those principles. She hasn't offered any other policies in return, but she has said that she wouldn't do either of those.
Thank you. What about Kemi Badenoch? Jack, would you like to say?
She's not opposed.
Does she want to leave Sorry.
She's not opposed. The lady of process. It's about methodical ways. It's all right as a soundbite policy saying, "Oh yeah, we'll leave the ECHR early on day one and get all the shadow cabinet to sign a pledge saying they definitely will commit to that." But it's about getting people on board, coming with a plan. I mean, she's observed. She voted for Brexit and stuff, but she observed the problems with like there not being an exit plan, a Brexit plan. So if the decision was made to leave the ECHR after she's done other things as well, what we can do without leaving the ECHR as well, she will have a clear plan of how we these things. But there's plenty of things that we can actually be doing without leaving the ECHR. I mean, yes, it's caused problems, but there's things we need to sort out within our own system as too, and then come out and then just coming off the cusp with like a soundbite policy, without detailing how. I mean, it's a policy, but it's not like how, is it? It's about just leaving the ECHR. I mean, because there's the questions about Northern Ireland and how it might interact with the Good Friday Agreement. So it's about process, procedure, and it's not something what Kemi's ever ruled out. But there's other things to hit the ground running on first.
Thank you. When it comes to inflation and the economy is not growing properly, but we are out of recession. The economy is not growing as we want to be. However, on a good news, inflation is down to 1.7, and the economy is finally out of recession. The economy is showing signs of recovery, but not enough growth. How would your candidate be on this foundation in future, in opposition or in government, to grow the British economy? Let's start with Jack for Kemi Badenoch.
Public sector productivity is low. Private sector productivity not doing so bad, but we have a bloated public sector in many areas. Not enough, maybe perhaps too many. Well, we know too many pen pushers and not enough people on the ground in some areas. But this goes back again against the diagnostic booklet, what Kemi did, where she details the problems with the state and with this bureaucratic class. We need to streamline government, make it more efficient, and make it easier to deliver on things like the economy. She says the government should focus on mastering the essentials, trying to do everything, jack of all, but everything being bad. So, and she will bring the party with her. She'll set up these commissions, and she'll suggest ideas. She'll have this constructive discussions within a shadow cabinet. And will come up with a clear, comprehensive manifesto for the future general election. But we don't know what the economy is going to be like in a few years. So making policies now, we might risk being like Keir Starmer, where he went back on every single one of his leadership pledges.
Thank you. Now, Ben, how would Robert Jenrick grow the British economy?
Yeah. So again, listeners to your show will note that as with education and housing and legal and illegal immigration, we're about 15 minutes in, and we're still waiting for a single policy from the advocate for Kemi. Offer some policies, because Robert again has laid out what he would do. It's very easy to say, you would be fiscally conservative, but how? It's very easy to say you would cut tax, but how? So so one of the big things that we need to get to is by getting more money in people's pockets. As you were rightly saying, the state is far less effective at spending money than you or I. So the more money we get back into people's pockets, the better. And so that's why Robert Jenrick has announced a cut of 2p in income tax. But how would he fund this? Well, by making changes to the benefit system to reduce the number of claimants back to where they were pre-pandemic. This is a costed measure. This is a thought-out measure. This is a sober measure to show our intent when it comes to tax break. But also, we don't want to make the same mistakes as, for example, Elizabeth Truss did. And so he's come out and said that the fundamental mistake of that mini budget was to abandon fiscal conservatism. It was that £100 billion spending spree with the tax cut. So by these thought out plans that he's announced a tax cut, but he's also announced how he's going to pay for it. Because on day one, the leader is going to be asked that every time they criticize Labour, not just why they're criticizing Labour, but what the alternative policy would be. Kemi doesn't have one on the economy, like she doesn't have one on legal immigration, like she doesn't have one on illegal immigration, like she doesn't have one on education, like she doesn't have one on housing. Robert Jenrick does. That's why you should have your vote.
Thank you. Do be mindful about time for both representatives. Now we jump on the issues of tax when it comes to the economy. The past Conservative government and the current Labour government are both criticised for putting up taxes. What is your candidate's approach on cutting taxes and balancing the fiscal book? Let's start with Robert Jenrick, Representative Ben Woods.
Yeah, so I just touched on that a moment ago with regards to the economy. His focus is in relation to income tax, and as I said, the way that what's happened since COVID is this absolute bloating of the welfare bill. It's about getting people back into work to reduce that welfare bill, which frees up extra money so we can put money back into working people's pockets. A big commitment by Robert Jenrick, but I believe it to be the right one, and I believe it's the right approach with regards to funding it. Ultimately, how do we get tax cuts? While being fiscally responsible. I believe that Robert Jenrick's identified the right approach, which is to get people back into work, the dignity, the security of work, and in doing so, contributing back to the Exchequer, so the Exchequer can weigh less heavily on all of our pockets.
Thank you. Now, Kemi Baynoff's representative, Kenwy Smith. How would your candidate, how will Kemi Baynoff reduce taxes while balancing the books?
She's also spoken quite strongly and passionately about how the welfare state, it's not there for people to use to live off of those who are working. It should very much be scaled to a safety net to help those who fall too low and spring them back up. But we got to look at like what benefit, if there's benefits going to be cuts or reforms. Look at how we do it. And she is said she's willing, and she has been willing to speak out about things that might sound a bit unpopular, or a bit insensitive. But I have to have half conversations about and maybe find out some unpopular truths, things about this, about if like people claiming some benefits like out of work benefits because of their mental health. I mean, mental health is something that's very serious, but it's about ways we can build a more mentally resilient society as well. We can support those who might be having anxiety issues or whatever, and have them in work. It shouldn't be one of those things where you're just written off. And not so these things over time they'll create. She's thought it should be systemic. So she'll be talking about building a structural surplus over time and getting the bill down so we can cut taxes and grow things. And it's not. And obviously she's a big aid skeptic as well. She believes in free and fair trade, not foreign aid handouts as a go-to.
Thank you, thank you. Now let's come back to diplomacy, which is another a big problem here, considering many issues around the world. Considering Putin's war in Ukraine, conflict in Israel, Gaza, and Lebanon, which we just lately have an update, which I believe is lovely, and a lovely tension. Sorry, a rising tension in Taiwanese Strait as well as in Korea. What is? I apologize. There's no lovely tensions. I was referring to the death of the Hamas leader, which I found lovely, but not the death of civilians, of course. Sorry, I do apologize to the audience. What is your candidate's opinions and approach to what role should the UK play inside the international tensions and amongst these countries and sides of these conflicts? Let's start with Kemi Badenoch's representative, Jack Kenway Smith.
Apologies, I coughed a little bit there. It wasn't anything sarcastic. It was generally because I had a drink and it went a bit down the wrong way. Right. So Kemi has stressed the importance that the defence budget has to be increased, and she's spoken very seriously about what she is describing as an axis of authoritarian states. She finalised negotiations into the Comprehensive, Progressive and Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is a multilateral free trade agreement, for instance, and China's not a part of that. But because we are members of it, we'll have a veto to stop how combats the growing influence of China, for instance, in the Pacific. She's our builder. Like we've got some talented individuals in our current caucus who she'll work with and come up with like these with like comprehensive strategies and for like so this is something to take seriously. It's something she's got some expertise in, going around on international trips. She's got the experience, she's got the understanding.
Right.
She's grown up in countries where there's been civil unrest, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. I think you made your point very clear. I'm gonna be more strict on time. I'm gonna be tough on time and tough on the courses of time from now on. The time is quite straight at the time. So, Robert Jemmings' representative, considering all these conflict and tensions around the world, what do you think the role the UK should play? What does your candidate think the role the UK should play in this tension?
Yeah, so I think we should start off by recognising that regardless of which candidate we back in this leadership contest, we can actually be very proud of our party's stance and support, in particular, of Ukraine. We heard there that Kemi would increase defence spending. For what? To 2.6, to 2.7, to 2.8, to 2.9, to 3, to 5, to 10%. We don't know. There's no commitment. You don't have a commitment. If you're not prepared to commit to a figure of what you're prepared to spend, then the words become meaningless. Robert Jenrick has proposed to spend up to 3%, to raise that to 3% of GDP, as it was in line with the previous target of the government. With regards to Israel, Jenrick has been probably the strongest candidate throughout this leadership contest, and his support for those. Getting attacked by Kate Burley for wearing a Hamas or terrorist hoodie. Of course, by UK law, they absolutely are terrorists, and his stance on Israel is admirable.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Right, I'm sorry about the time. Next one will be a longer question, so you will allow more time for you. That was ignore me. Okay, when it comes to employment and pensions, thank you for the answer as well. When it comes to employment and pensions, Conservative pledged to keep the winter fuel allowance for pensioners and the pension triple lock. Would your candidate commit to that pledge as opposition? And what is your candidate's approach when it comes to pension more generally? Let's start with Ben Woods representing Robert Jenrick.
One of the few areas that we do actually have policy commitments from Kemi, and they're pretty much exactly the same as the ones from Robert. There's not much disagreement on this at all. Both candidates have stated that they'll reverse Labour's means testing of the winter fuel allowance, and make sure we protect the triple lock, which looks like it may be coming under threat during during the late during Labour's budget later this year. So on pensions and on policies regarding the winter fuel allowance, I believe I'm right. I may be credited, but I believe I'm right that both of our candidates have announced that they would be reversing Labour's attack on old people.
Thank you.
As
Thank you. Right, Jack, is Ben correct? Let's say Jack from Campaign Badenoch's campaign. Is he right that you are both sticking to a triple lock commitment?
Kemi has been supportive of like protecting our pensioners. With like it was obviously the policy. It was a policy in our last manifesto to keep the triple lock. She hasn't said she's against that, and she recognises the importance of that. Now, as for the thing about the winter fuel allowance, yes, she absolutely would reverse the way how Labour have gone about it. But however, she does want to look into a intelligent way of how people who are very very wealthy and don't need or want the winter fuel allowance, a way how we can deliver it to those above like 13 grand and those who need it, but that the very rich aren't just going to get it automatically. But she's an engineer. She can find cost-effective ways with a team, and so yes, she would reverse it being gotten rid of, and should bring it back, but a bit different to how it was before.
Thank you very much. Ben, on behalf of Robert Jenrick, many young people, when it comes to employment, tells me they're still struggling to find a job because their school didn't teach them much employable skills. How would your candidate make it easier for young people to find a job and further reducing youth unemployment and unemployment for all group of ages? Thank you. Ben Woods on behalf of Robert Jenrick. I think he may have just went to the toilet. So let's give it to Jack Kenway Smith on behalf of Kemi Badenoch.
Repeat the question. It's about jobs.
Young people, youth unemployment. How to reduce that? Because many young people tell me they can't find a job because the school doesn't teach them the knowledge that they need when it comes to society.
Well, Kemi, again, like she came to this country and got off working straight away, worked her way through her A-levels working at McDonald's, and it was a great means of like personal development as well. And she recognises how these jobs like that and other jobs with getting people working young, it helps a lot with and it's also about young people knowing that they've got hope to progress, and it's about making work pay. These are things that these are principles that Kemi believes in, that work should be rewarding, but it's about how we do that. We got to look at these things systemically and deliver practically. And so young people have hope for the future. She was interested in entrepreneurship as well, offering something different to the table, what Labour don't talk about, opportunities for young entrepreneurs.
Uh,
So
yes.
this is yeah.
Thank you, Jack. When I say round it up, thank you, just finish your last sentence. You don't need to cut it straight away. So do be mindful about time. Just speak very straight and clear.
Yes.
I believe Mr. Woods is having a little bit of problem with his connection. Again, it is not a Roblox debate without technical difficulties. Mr.
Okay.
Ben,
We get
I can see on our screen he has 3 dots on his window.
We'll get time to ask each other a question as well, won't we, Mr. Chan?
Yes, we will have a break after the scripted question because everyone deserves a break. So, Ben, I will ask you that question later, which I found very important, and I hope you will answer that later. But now, when it comes to young people's votes, only 19% of 18 to 24 voters voted for the Tory at the last elections. 57 of them voted Labour. Rest of them are split between Reform, Lib Dems, and the Green Party, and in Scotland, the SNP. ITV told the Conservative that it is facing a ticking time bomb when it comes to young people's vote. How would your candidate reverse this? I see Ben Wood is back. Can we hear you? No, we can't. Now, Jack
No.
Kenny Smith, on behalf of Kemi Benenock, would you say
Sure.
how would Kemi bring back the young people's votes?
By exciting them and offering them genuine alternatives to what Labour do. I mean, she's also understands that there's that university isn't the right path for everyone, and shouldn't be the only path. People, there's other options if they're not confident that going to uni is for them. There's other ways they can get up there, and then they talked about young entrepreneurship. I mean, different avenues to explore that and incentives about creating a more daring culture. And to do this, there needs to be incentives, way how young people can be rewarded, by getting on the property ladder through their work, and different opportunities. It's about opportunity creation for young people.
Thank you very much. Right, Ben Woods, are you back now? Have we reincarnated him? Ben,
Oh,
he's a lovely He's a great speaker. Let me.
I know he is. Yeah, it's just
He's muted. You're muted, Ben.
Good to have him back when.
I believe he may have been silenced by Starmer's Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah, Starmer's in his house right now. Here we go.
I'm not sure. Here we are.
Oh, wait. Just
Got him.
let me tell you how to fix everything again. Do a setting. Put your sensitivity into minimum.
Hi, can you hear me now, Jay?
Yes, lovely. Okay, you missed 2 questions, but that's fine. I'll ask you again. Many young people tells me they're struggling to find a job because of the lack of skills that school actually tell them when it comes to society. How would your candidate, how would Robert Jenrick make it easier for young people to find a job and reduce unemployment in young people? You missed it.
Okay, so this goes back to there's 2 key points here. The first is the labour market as a whole, and the second is regards to skills and training. So, regards to the labour market as a whole, this stems back to what we were talking earlier with regards to mass migration. Robert Jenrick's written a very detailed paper, on legal migration, on how mass migration has effectively flooded the workforce. It has suppressed wages and it's reduced work opportunities and in-work training for people who are starting off in their career. And so it's very important that we get mass migration back under control. And we do that through instituting a legal cap in Parliament. With regards to young people who are university. That's absolutely the right choice for some people, but Tony Blair was absolutely wrong when he said that the majority of young people should go to university. There are many, many careers where university is not necessary, and actually people are more suited towards a vocational training sort of educational program, and that's why Robert Jenrick has talked about taking away funding from those underperforming universities, from those courses that serve only to indoctrinate and not to educate, and to spend that money instead on funding apprenticeship hubs these at these vocational centres in order to provide a different route into industry in terms of skilling up the workforce which in particular for younger people.
Thank you very much. Now, the second question that I'm going to ask you, Ben, for Robert Jerrick. Only 19% of 18 to 24 voters voted for the Tories at the last election. ITV tell us that the Conservative is facing a ticking time bomb when it comes to young people, and perhaps in the future it will be never electable. How would your candidate, Robert Jenrick, reverse this? Ben?
Oh no.
I,
With us.
I,
Is
Ben,
he with us?
I believe he is. We may want to take an earlier break after I finish the pub questions. Yes, there is pub questions. Of course, you expect that from me. Ben. No, I cannot hear you. Just plug your headphone straight into your computer. Well, John, that's fine actually. Well, we do have technical issues, which many of our Roblox debates will have, including a general election debate when the Labour guy actually missed about 4 questions actually, and so that is a little bit awkward, but it's fine. Let's get to the advertisement, and we'll be back for more questions as well as the question from the audience and the closing statement. Thank you very much for sticking with the RBC Spotlight, and I'll see you soon.
This is RBC Television.
This is RBC.
You are listening to RBC Radio 1.
Good evening.
Welcome to RBC World News.
3, 2, 1. This is RBC Television.
Hi, welcome back to RBC Spotlight, where we have a wonderful 2 representatives for Kenny Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, Ben Woods and Jack Kenway-Smith, talking about why their candidate is best for the party. We just faced a little bit of technical issues, but that is fine. We can now come back to the question about pubs, community and culture. You would probably expect this question from me, and I bet you have prepared for this. According to camera, 1,293 pubs are closed last year, with just 296 reopened. That's more than 1,000. Actually, that is just around 1,000 pubs net loss when it comes to our pub industry. This lost an economy of 103 million and 20,000 jobs. What is your candidate's approach to support pubs and stop their closures? So, Jack Kenway-Smith, how will Kemi support the pubs?
These pubs, many of them are classed as, what would you say, SME, small, medium-sized enterprises. She knows that there's a lot of big burden of red tape on pubs and other small businesses. These are things what sort of got to be addressed, streamlining red tape. We don't have to make sure it's in line with EU regulation, thanks to the rule bill, which she guided through Parliament, and hopefully we'll still have those powers to do that when we come back into government, and we will tear up red tape, streamline things. But she also understands that there's trade-offs. If we freeing up like red tape, what are we? How are we going to do that? I mean, what's we can't have it all. So these things relate to, like, obviously things like pubs, and obviously it's a changing market as well, and different challenges will have to be addressed accordingly. And yes, so that's broadly. So will obviously I'll be surprised if Robert has a specific policy on pubs and whether or not it will be able to be implemented at the time of the next general election. But okay.
Thank you. Ben Woods, the representative for Robert Jenrick. Is Jack right about Robert not having policy in pubs, or does he actually have something to support pubs and stop their closures?
Won't surprise any of your listeners that, unlike Kemi, Robert does have a policy on this. If I can just request just a few more seconds to talk about your previous question, because my technical difficulties cut me off, and it was a really important one about
Oh, that's
younger
fine. For
voters.
the young voters, yes.
Is yeah. Is it okay if I quickly answer that and then I'll come on to the pub thing?
Of
So
course.
we've talked about a few of the different areas. Housing is massive, workforce is massive, education is massive, and but in order to actually, it's not good enough to just talk in platitudes. You need to have the policies to back it up, and that's why I'm still a broken record tonight. Robert Jenrick on the education, whether it's universities, whether it's apprenticeship hubs, whether it's housing and zonal planning, whatever it might be. Robert Jenrick not just has the right words, he also has the policies to go alongside it. And actually, there was some very important polling that came out yesterday, if I may, MRP polling, a very detailed poll. It found that if the election was held today with Kemi as leader, we would still have a Labour majority, and we would win 151 seats. If Robert Jenrick was our leader today and we had an election today, Labour would lose their majority and we would win 178 seats. So even before day one has started, Robert Jenrick can build that broad coalition that includes young people that we haven't had, which we've been losing support from in recent years. Now, I'll go on to the pub question, a very important question. So you talked about policy on that, and actually during the pandemic, you may remember during one of those very warm and glorious summers, the rules were changed to allow pubs to do more al fresco and restaurants to do more al fresco dining. That is, they could ease the burden and ease the red tape to allow pubs to put out deck chairs and put out tables outside and pedestrianised roads. And actually, the minister in charge of bringing about that policy was, of course, Robert Jenrick, and he has said that he would bring that back and make that permanent. It's about supporting our high streets. It's about bringing people back out into the community, and it also supports not just the restaurants, not just the just the pubs and the bars. It also supports the taxis. It supports the local transport. It supports the kebab shop on the way home, which I'm sure some of us have frequented after a couple in the pub. So it's about this. So it's about, by supporting restaurants, by allowing them to expand, by supporting pubs, by allowing greater outside seating, etc. Simple measures of getting government out of businesses and people's way allows not just them to thrive, but the entire local ecosystem to thrive as well.
Thank you. Now for a less serious question, and that question is about you, the representatives. When I asked this question in person with the candidates for leader, Robert Jenrick said, "I'm a lightweight," and Kemi said she would lose the Downing contest. But how quickly can you sink a pint? Let's start with Robert Jenrick, Representative Ben Wood.
Well, I must say that I'm really susceptible to bloating. So if it's a pint of lager, then I'll be absolutely hopeless. I'm more of a stout or an ale man. So
I am
as
an
long
ale
as it's
man
a
as well,
stout or an
so
ale, yeah, well, a warm pint of ale, not too cold, not too bubbly.
indeed.
Probably uh, uh, just shy of about 50 seconds, 55, 60 seconds, I would say.
55
Around then.
seconds. Good gosh. You're
Yeah,
losing
I know.
You're losing the members now.
I'm
You're
not
losing the
very good at
members
I'm not
now.
very good at the technique. I'm not very good at the technique of opening the gullet. I have to keep going for gulps, and yeah. So yeah, it's
Okay,
about
Jack.
savouring it, though, Jay. It's about savouring it.
Indeed.
Well,
Jack, how quickly can you down a pint, Jack?
I'm not as experienced at that as you, Mr. Chan, but and like Ben, I'd have to take a good few at least a couple gulps to get it in one go. But there's been times where got sidetracked on time and then knocked something down quick, and yeah, I'd probably say about I don't know 40 or 50 seconds. I don't know, something like that, because or maybe a bit less. It depends what the drink is as well, but it would get to my head quite quick as well when I neck it. But
Both of you are losing members for your pint downing abilities.
No,
However,
in
however,
fairness, I'm more of a whiskey drinker up here in Scotland.
indeed, yes. Ben Woods is, by the way, in Scotland, where they have lovely, lovely drinks. Now come to a question of slightly more soberness when it comes to the question of moral politics. That covers abortion, assisted dying, etc. When it comes to the moral policies, such as abortion and assisted dying, what is your candidate's approach to this? Would I have Kemi Badenoch's representative, Jack, please?
Emmy recognises the hotness and the complexity of the abortion debate, and she would hate it to replicate the toxicity we get in America about this. And she understands that these issues, if they were ever to be addressed, it would be through a private member's bill or something, or maybe an early day motion, and someone like Kemi should probably leave it as a matter of conscience, a free vote. It's she and as for assisted dying specifically, she's not necessarily against it in principle for some cases, but it's about again, it goes back to a mindset of practicality. She doesn't trust Labour to make sure there's adequate safeguards in place if with this bill on assisted dying. She thinks she hasn't got high hopes that this legislation will be safe and get things done, but she does understand the argument for this assisted dying in principle for things like terminal illness. I mean, it's quite close to her. I mean, her father died of a brain tumor a couple of years back, and so she definitely sympathises with the argument, but she also recognises the big dangers, and she don't trust Labour to be appropriate with the way they're going about rushing through these legislation pieces.
Thank you very much. Now, when it comes to moral policies, let's come to Robert Jenrick, representative Ben Woods. What does Robert stand on? What is his policies on abortion or assisted dying?
Yeah, so as was previously mentioned, these are free votes. These aren't things that the party leader forces other MPs to follow their views on. When it comes to assisted suicide, and I think it's important we get the language right and we don't start using the language of people on one side of the argument over the other, and it is suicide that we're talking about. So when it comes to assisted suicide, all four candidates at the time were quizzed at this in the party conference, and they all said that they would vote against it. Some because of the principle, but others because of the disastrous impact that we've seen in places like Canada and Belgium and the Netherlands and elsewhere. So I think all the candidates are agreed on this and how they would personally vote.
Thank you. Well, both candidates also highlight some issues when it comes to gender ideology, especially on the transitioning therapy more broadly, especially those for children, as well as the protection of single-sex spaces. That was within our last party manifesto, which Rishi Sunak. What is your candidate's take on this topic? Let's start with Jack, representing Kemi Badenoch.
Well, of course, Kemi has hit the as this was within her remit. This issue came specifically under her brief as Minister for Women and Equalities. She was often in the press about speaking out, deviating from the mainstream narrative you'd get pushed by the BBC or the Quongocrats and the Labour Party at the time. She got a lot of criticism, received a lot of vitriol from like celebrities like David Tennant and she had the Inquisition and and the braveness to like meet with people, whistleblowers at Tavistock when they were being like silenced. And how she would put it is that she's actually brought Labour onto our turf. They're trying to vilify her, but they've inadvertently admitted that Kemi was right all along on these issues because they've dropped their policy of self-ID. So I think it's quite clear where Kemi stands on these things about safeguarding minors, and she hates the idea of them being these issues being trivialised as culture wars because she doesn't use that terminology. It's what the left use to trivialise these very important questions raised about safeguarding minors from this dangerous ideology.
Thank you. Thank you. What about Ben Woods on behalf of Robert Jenner? What does Robert stand on these topics when it comes to gender transitioning and single-sex spaces?
Yeah, I'll be very quick with this. Robert has stood by what Kemi has done. So obviously Kemi's brief under last government was as Equalities Minister, so this fell under her remit, as it were, while Jenner was dealing with immigration policy. And so Kemi did lead this, and she did a valiant job in doing so. And Robert supported her all the way, and continues to be in lockstep with both her and the majority of the party in making sure that these issues remain resolved as they were under the previous government.
Thank you. Right, now, health. Britain is known for its health services, whether in a positive way when it comes to free healthcare, which Americans do not get, or when it comes to the bad part, when it comes to large-scale spending and long waiting lists. Britain is very famous for its National Health Service. Rishi Sunak proposed a generational... wait, sorry, that was the one after. The National Health Service waiting list, however, remains to be long. Cancer patients face long waiting times, and while we spend around 20% of government revenue on the National Health Service, and actually a lot more from year to year, what is your candidate's approach to reform the National Health Service and on the future of British public health service? Let's start with Jack Kenway. What does Kemi stand on the National Health Service?
The National Health Service and its problems are, if anything, a prime example of the broader picture she has diagnosed quite comprehensively in a booklet. Obviously, she's establishing her principles. She's diagnosed the problems, and together, she'll bring the party together and we'll come up with plans of how to address these problems. She recognises that we're throwing more and more money at the NHS, and it's like a bottomless pit. It's not getting any better; it's getting worse. So that's clearly a systemic issue. We'll look at evidence-based solutions, bring things together, and we don't want to be like Labour, who just wait until they get into government, designing a plan for how they're gonna solve these systemic problems. She'll have that at the ready as we come in, and we'll be on board with this clear plan. That's where she differs largely from Labour.
Thank you. Ben Wood, what's Robert Jenrick's take on the National Health Service?
Again, as with housing and education and everything else we've talked about, immigration, etc., it's one thing to identify the problem. It is a very different thing, and it's a different skill set to propose a solution. And probably the biggest issue that we've got in a healthcare service at the moment is a lack of accountability, of trusts that are failing, and yet managers are not being held responsible for it. In fact, 90% of trusts last year didn't fire a single manager for poor performance, and yet the poor performance is evident. It's evident in A&E waiting times. It's evident if you ever want to get a GP appointment, etc. And Robert Jenner was very clear about this: stop treating the NHS as a religion. And the way that we do that is by greater accountability. And he has proposed measures, policies to enable greater, which will give greater ability to sack underperforming managers in the NHS. Often we have valiant nurses and doctors which are let down by the system and the managerial class within the NHS, and it is dealing with those upper echelons of management and making sure that they're held accountable and removed if they're underperforming that will enable the NHS to make the efficiency gains it needs.
Thank you. Now, come back to the question which I accidentally said. You probably already guessed what it is. Rishi Sunak proposed a generational smoking ban, and as well as restriction on vaping intended to improve public health. Well, critics suggest it will be ineffective and causes a large black market and infringe on personal choice. What is your candidate's take on these public health restrictions when it comes to smoking and vaping? Let's start with Jack Kenway Smith. What is Kemi's take when it comes to public health restrictions?
It's common sense basically, and not prioritizing these nanny state policies that aren't actually going to achieve anything. These are policies that aren't really enforceable realistically. And like Robert Jenrick, Kemi did against this smoking ban, this generational ban, because she considered it to be wrong in principle and impractical. And this is why we have to get the right policy right. We have to explore these things and identify and it's impractical. But that specific policy is also, she would argue, is definitely wrong in principle. How people born days apart one will be treated like they're minor in some ways, whereas the other will be treated like they're an adult. You could have like someone 25 or whatever, and one could be a few days younger and just not reach. Yeah, and so yes, it's not a priority. She's against them. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, Ben Wood, what's Robert's take when it comes to smoking, vaping, and other public health restrictions? Sorry.
Yeah, so as was previously mentioned, I believe both candidates are fairly aligned with regards to this. Robert Jenrick has talked about getting a smaller state that works as opposed to a bigger state that doesn't, and this is one of those policies that clearly doesn't align itself with what a Conservative government should be doing whilst in power.
Thank you. Now it comes to transport. Rishi Sunak was under a lot of controversies when it comes to HS2. For those who don't know what HS2 is, it is a highway speed that connects, by plan, connects London to Manchester and to Leeds. Many Northerners are angry and Midlanders are angry about the scrapping of HS2, while some people celebrate it. If your candidates become leader and then Prime Minister, what is their take on HS2 and the future of British public transportation? Let's come with Jack Kenway Smith. What is Kemi's take on public transport and HS2?
Well, it depends on a number of things, of course. She stood up to the insinuation that Sky News presenter said about and mentioned how there's a metropolitan bubble. I mean, the poorest this presenter argued that the poorest of people in society don't drive. Well, that might be the case in Greater London, but Greater London isn't the rest of the country. So she recognises that a lot of countries are behind with their public transport. But again, we don't know what the state of the country is going to be after 4 or 5 years of the Labour government. So we got to look what things might be like. I mean, she could announce her ideas now on this, but what if it's not going to be able to be enforced? I mean, she would hate us to be in a Keir Starmer situation where every single policy he's announced in his leadership election he's gone back on, and he's going. So yes, should we know roughly where she stands? Well, we know quite clearly where she stands in principle, but we've got to play it by. We've got to adjust to the situation when it comes to formulating policy and policy that works, and we can all get on board with.
Yeah, thank you. Let's come with Robert Jenrick, Representative Ben Wood. What is Robert's take on HS2 and public transportation?
Yeah, so on HS2 specifically, I don't think he's made a definitive statement on that during the course of this leadership contest. But on transport more generally, this goes back to reforming the planning system. It's absolutely absurd the level of amount of planning, the cost, the time it takes to build anything in this country. We're one of the wettest countries on earth, and yet we have water shortages because we can't build reservoirs. We have the technology to build nuclear power plants, and yet we have we have to import our energy from foreign countries. We have a housing crisis, and yet we have all this land. So, and it's the same when it comes to transport. It's about reforming the planning system, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, this zonal planning system, which allows lots of decisions to be taken simultaneously without having to go on an individual case by case basis. Because actually, what we see with a lot of transport issues is actually very local. It's that the junction at the end of your road doesn't function properly. It's that your local bus service just doesn't operate at the times that it needs to. It's that the local tram doesn't work. It's at these local levels, and by introducing a zonal planning system, which is written about it in his white paper in quite some depth, that we can get Britain building again, whether it's homes or whether it's transport or whether it's anything else.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, the last part, I'm very sure many of us are already waiting for audience questions and questions to each other. So, last part, we come back to the party ourselves. Candidates are now trying to be elected by party members, and party members really care about how their associations are run. Campaigners and members across the country are saying CCHQ, Conservative Campaign Headquarters, is ineffective and undemocratic. Well, YCs like me also said the party no longer makes them proud to call home and highlight the lack of support to young Conservatives. What would your candidate deliver change in CCHQ and support the YCs? Let's start with Ben Wood. Robert Jeremy. What's the Robert Jeremy's plan to reform CCHQ and support the young Conservatives?
Yeah, so in opposition, this is a really important point, because if we don't get the party machine right, we're not going to be able to win the election irrespective of policy. And so Robert Jenrick's been incredibly clear on this. We will no longer have this system of parachuting in the favoured sons and daughters of the powers that be, this parachuting in of candidates, which we saw at the general election, which we see time and time again, that runs roughshod over the views and the will of members and local associations alike. And part of the way to do this is not just to make grand speeches saying that that's what you want to do. Again, it's about actually proposing concrete solutions. And unlike the other policies, this is actually something we can do in opposition. So there's absolutely no excuse from Kemi here for offering no real substance to her to her platitudes on this issue. In particular, in regards to candidates, Robert Jenrick has announced that he would abolish the party lists, which effectively give rein to certain favoured sons and daughters to be parachuted in wherever CCHQ wishes them to be. That will come to an end, and we will be asking CCHQ will not just send you emails begging you for more and more money, but it will actually be asking members' views on what do you actually think about the direction of the party on the local, on the regional, and on the national issues.
Thank you, Ben. Right, Ben, will Robert Jerrick sign up to the promise that he will give local association full or nearly full power when it comes to choosing their local candidate?
Yes, that's what I've said. But the key to doing that is not just saying that you're going to do that, is actually bringing about the internal reforms. And Robert Jenrick has laid out what those internal reforms would be under his leadership. Kemi Badenoch has not. Broken record again, I know, but we keep coming back to this point. It's not good enough just to say, oh, these are my principles. We have to see your actions as well. On this issue, Robert Jenrick has laid out his actions. Kemi Badenoch has not. We need to vote for the man with the plan, not the person who's promising a plan tomorrow.
Okay, right. Jax Kenway Smith for Kemi Badenoch. Campaigners are saying CCHQ is broken. YCs say they do not feel proud of being in the country and they're not supported properly. How would Kemi deliver change in CCHQ and support the YCs?
Oh, CCHQ. Well, this will probably the work she'll be doing in there will look like with her team will look like a precursor to what she will do when she hopefully gets into government. So she has supported the associations be able to select their own candidates, and she's also, and a fun fact, because she was actually the vice chair for candidates, and as a statement, or a little funny statement of like principle, she first thing she did is struck her own husband Hamish off the candidates list, because she was aware of conflicts of interest like that.
Thank you, Jack.
She recognised for YCs very quickly.
Yes.
Yes, she wants YCs to be able to feel proud and speak out and not be penalised.
Okay. I mean, that is a lovely. That's a good statement. Right. Would your candidates give local associations more or all power when it comes to choosing the local candidates? Yes or no?
I'm not sure what a specific position is on this, but I imagine it's one of those things that varies on the circumstances and that. But yes,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Now, this is the done. We're all done
Yes.
with all the scripted questions, which are written by me, which is actually the longest and most boring part. But anyone can just go back and see what each candidate actually stand on those issues that matter to you. Now, despite I try my best making a total of 20 questions, I may have missed some. So anyone in the live may submit a question. I will take around 4 or 5 questions, and candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer each of them. Does anyone want to type in on the live in YouTube, as well as also ask them around on WhatsApp and more? Do not hesitate on asking whichever question you want to ask. Any of them are very welcome. Okay. Well, I do have a few troll questions which I will not ask. I'm just scrolling through. Right. Well, I do have a question comes from Vors, actually. It's a question directed specifically to Jack, actually.
Oh.
Well, Kemi Badenoch. He's challenged how Kemi Badenoch has a Nigerian heritage. How would you respond to his claim that they cannot be fully loyal to the British public service? How do you respond to that claim? By the way, I certainly don't endorse that claim. By the way, it's the only question inside of life.
Of course. Well, simple. She chose this country when she was 16. She embraced it, and and having grown up in Nigeria, where at a time when there was a lot of civil unrest, partly to do with multiculturalism and other things to do with socialism, and that, and the infringement is going on. She sees the contrast, and she's grateful and proud that she's part of our nation, and she was actually born here, believe it or not, in Wimbledon, although she grew up in Nigeria, but came here when she was 16. She lived here many years. She's married an English husband. They've got 3 beautiful kids together. And yes, so I don't think there's a question. She's definitely loyal. And just a fun fact, she wouldn't be the first, although she was born in London and that, we've had leaders in the past that have been born in other countries. Boris Johnson, for instance.
Yes, Boris Johnson is actually born in America. He's actually born in America, I believe. Yes, many people think Boris Johnson is entirely British. He's the most British person there. He is actually American. Right.
Of course.
I think that question is being answered. I don't endorse what's claimed
Jay,
there.
if I could,
sorry.
Jay, if I could quickly, say that I support everything that Jack just laid out in response to that question. I think it's a great asset to the membership that questions over race or gender or anything like that have not been a major part of this leadership contest, and I have no doubt that if she does win, that she will be absolutely loyal to not just the party but to the country as well.
Thank you. I will tend to agree myself. Okay, I have new questions which are much better than the one I got. What are your candidates' positions on the legality of? Should I say that word on camera, Johnny? Should I say that word on camera? Um, sure. Okay. What are the candidates' position on the legality of pornography? Let's start with Jack. What is Kemi's take on that? Actually,
I don't know
never.
ins and outs of her personal views, but all I do know what she's vocal about is about how careful we've got to be doing with pushing through legislations on issues like this. Like there was the online harm started off to address these really serious concerns about minors seeing, well, young people seeing like pornography, and
Yes.
but then it sadly it went off topic and started to erode into issues about free speech, and that was not what the bill was initially intended for. But she's quite strict on issues about minors using social media. It's her personal view that well, she doesn't let her own kids use social media. And
Riley.
she it's
Or the risk becoming me. Riley. Okay. Sorry. I went a bit of ranting. Let's expanding that question, or not just sexual content on any sort of media, but also on social media as broadly, especially focusing on Online Safety Act, which the past government passed, and the new government may be looking at furthermore. So, what is Robert Jemrick's take on the legality of sexual content on internet, as well as more broadly the online safety for those in vulnerable position? Ben Woods.
Yeah, so obviously there's a great emphasis when it comes to protecting children online, and there was the online harms bill, but as was mentioned, that was usurped and derailed by people who wished to expand it to attack free speech, um, which was most unfortunate. In terms of his position on pornography, more generally, it's not my position, but I believe that he's fairly content with the status quo, although if he can work out a way to protect children better without infringing on free speech, um, he uh, he he would do that as well.
Okay. Now a question that I can confidently ask on the television, which is from Clement. I'll try. Yes, I'll take a few more questions from members of the public. I think there are many questions over here. Kemi Badenoch, that's specific to you, Jack, has stated that she wants to discuss the possibility of rolling back devolution. Clemontian believe it will be disastrous for the Scottish and the Welsh parties, perhaps evidenced by recent endorsement. So, endorsement of Robert by RT Davis. Does she stand by rolling back devolution?
well, I don't know exactly what the person asking the question is referring to specifically, but chances are it was something she mentioned in passing, was discussing various options, and much like some of the other stuff she said, there's a good chance that this might have been misrepresented. But I'm not going to comment because I don't know. I honestly don't know what the gentleman's or the lady's referring to who's asking the question. But
Okay.
so yeah, it
Austin
wouldn't be fair for
Anchor
me to
asked.
answer.
Okay. Austin Anchor asked, "What would you do about homeless problems?" Um, Ben Woods, how was Robert's take when it comes to homelessness?
So we have to be a little bit careful in our language when we talk about homelessness. There's a difference between rough sleeping and homelessness. So rough sleeping is people who are sleeping on the streets, and that's what most people think of when they think of homelessness. But homelessness as a whole also includes people who are housed but only in temporary accommodation. So there's a difference there. Clearly, the most vulnerable of those two groups is the rough sleepers, which is a subset of homelessness more generally. And the previous government put in plans in order to end rough sleeping in the UK over the course of this decade. And I believe that is something that I don't believe that either Kemi or Robert has suggested to row back on that at all. So he'll be sticking towards that government target to end rough sleeping. As I said, homelessness is actually a much broader thing and includes things like people who are in temporary accommodation, and that's a very complex issue and much larger issue to solve. But in particular, specifically with rough sleeping, which is a subset of that, I think both the candidates are still signed up to the commitment that they made when in government.
Thank you. Kemi, Jack, what's Kemi's stance on homelessness and rough sleeping?
She understands. Yes, she's supportive of like a target to reduce those things and the government's previous work. And obviously these things relate back to bigger systemic issues about like housing, affordable housing, the right homes, the right places, and also, of course, illegal immigration, because there's a lot of like hotels and stuff that are being used, and these things could be used in better ways. Obviously, I know hotel is obviously temporary, but that's the general gist. Yeah, she supports the strategies to
Thank you.
reduce
Thank
homelessness.
you. Like, let's keep, because we have many very great audience questions I haven't thought about. We may have to extend this part, but in order to take as much question as possible, we have to keep our answers as short as possible, even if that means missing out something. So, Austin Anchor said, the Tron. I just ignore the name. What changes will we see the size of a small countryside area? So what's the urban policies? Not urban, rural policies when it comes to farming, when it comes to countryside issues. So, would you very quickly, Jack, Kenway Smith, would you very quickly say what Kemi would stand on farming and countryside?
She understands the issues they face and issues about food security and food questions. She lives in a rural constituency again, and this she hasn't established a detailed policy, but this goes back to reasoning with everything else. We got to know we can get people on board with it. She's got ideas, but it's about how we implement those.
Okay, Ben Woods, what's Robert's take on countryside and farming?
Yes, I think Jack could have just recorded the statement that she hasn't got a policy on this and just played it on repeat for all of these questions. So one of the big things when it comes to rural affairs that we've seen under the Labour government is this change to the planning targets. So to move out to increase planning targets dramatically in rural areas and cut them in urban areas. This is categorically insane. We need to do the absolute reverse. We need to be protecting our farming so we can keep our food security, and instead move our targets back into cities, and we do that through the zoning policies that Robert Jenrick has set out in detail in a white paper. They're ready to go. They're ready to hold Keir Starmer account on this issue.
Thank you. Will Place asked plenty of questions. I would choose a few. So, what changes will we see on primary and secondary school education? That goes with SATs, that goes with grammar school issues, and that goes with GCSE, A level, T levels, etc. So, let me just say, ask a few yes or no questions. Mandatory maths to 18. Does Robert stand by that? Ben?
I
Yes or no?
believe so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Kemi, does Kemi stand on that?
I don't know her personal view on it. I haven't heard her say she supports that, but yeah, mandatory
More
maths till
broadly,
18.
would you say? Which broadly would you say for Kemi? What is her commitment when it comes to primary and secondary school education? Not the higher education, but the GCSE bit and the A level bit.
Well, make sure they which part specifically? Because because
Under the last government, the schools. Let's talk about Ofsted. Ofsted would be quite. Ofsted is quite free school meal. Yeah, we can talk about free school meal later. Let's talk about Ofsted first. Offset is one of the heatest topic when it comes to parent school, secondary school.
Yeah.
Banning one word result on Ofsted, yes or no?
She's not in favour of banning that. She thinks parents should be able to be informed about the places where their kids are being educated.
Okay. Ben Wood, Robert Jenrick, does he want to ban one word result from Ofsted? Like what
It's
Labour
about
is
making
doing?
sure that no, he doesn't, because it gives parents more information, and this feeds back into his wider education policy for those age groups in regards to allowing the expansion of grammar schools and extra free schools. It's about parental choice. That's the Conservative vision. We don't believe, as the Socialists, that one size fits all. We believe that the parents know what's best for their kids.
Okay.
So we do that
Thank-
by providing them more information and more variety in school choice.
Okay, right. When it comes to school choice, does Kemi stand with having more school choice, including more grammar schools, free schools as well? Free schools basically when local communities form a school together. That's British education system for those who don't live there.
Well, absolutely, she supports more
Is that a
school
yes?
choice.
That's
Yes.
a yes. Okay, I'm very sure that many candidates all agree. Scrap banning grammar school, I believe, is this both a no from you?
So,
No. Okay.
uh,
So
so, sorry. So, I believe Jack just made Kemi's policy up for her there. Kemi hasn't commented on lifting the ban on grammar schools, but Robert Jenrick absolutely has.
okay. Will Place also said, "What would you do to stop the threats of war against the United Kingdom?" I believe he's trying to say, mention also on Russia and Ukraine. Um, well, Russia and Ukraine conflict is actually the first war that we see in decades in Europe, actually on the soil of Europe, that causes a lot of troubles when it comes to British security. When it comes to NATO, nuclear deterrent, security, what is the general take of your candidates on this? Let's start with Ben Wood. What is Robert's take when it comes to European defence?
Hmm. So with European defence, obviously, is very heavily reliant on American defence spending. This is something that's unsustainable going forward into the future. It's not good enough for a candidate just to say we need to spend more on defence. It's not good enough for a candidate to say, oh, well, I support the defence services. And it's not good enough for a candidate just to give platitudes. They need to provide rock solid targets and cast iron commitments. Robert Jenrick has done that. 3% of GDP on defence, no ifs, no buts, no maybes.
I think 3% GDP also was in our last manifesto. Does Kemi stick to that? What's Kemi's take more broadly when it comes to domestic here in the UK, here in Europe, when it comes to European defence and security?
Supports an increase in defence spending, but she hasn't specified how, because we don't know how. We don't know what the state of the economy will be, and we don't know how much we'll be able to increase it when the next general election comes.
Okay, right. Now we have the last question from JW about the recent riots in Southport. He asked, what are your candidates' opinion when it comes to the Southport riot and the social unrest which follows? Let's start with Kemi Badenoch's representative, Jack Kenway-Smith.
She didn't deny there's two-tier policing and that there's obvious tensions there that have been building up for a while. And got to get the police enforcing the laws they do properly, and the laws they already have for a start. And a lot of this goes into the systemic issues. Yeah.
Thank you. What's Robert Jenrick's opinion when it comes to the riots and the social unrest which happened earlier after Southport?
Yeah, we saw absolutely disgraceful scenes, but we saw disgraceful scenes from the far right and also the far left and Islamist extremist supporters. Robert Jenrick was very clear that the government should have called out both sides equally. We saw people like Jess Phillips, who own a Labour MP, who actually sought to defend a group of Islamist extremists following over the course of the summer. Clearly, we need to call out both sides unequivocally. If you are violent, you should go to prison and you should serve a lengthy term there.
Thank you. Right. We did take too much time, but we got brilliant question from our audiences. Now, each candidate will have 30 seconds each to ask 3 questions in a row, which is 1.5 minutes to ask 3 questions. I am sorry, JW, we're not commenting about Jacob Rees-Mogg calling Keir Starmer Adolf Hitler. We're not coming to that question. Sorry, we moved on. Okay, questions to each other. Everyone have 1.5 minutes to ask the opponent representative 3 questions. I recommend you to note down your question being asked to your question to avoid you forgetting it and have to repeat it. You would have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. Therefore, this process will probably take around 10 minutes. Okay. Let's start with Ben Wood. Ask your question. 3 questions, 1.5 minute. Ben Wood
Right, yeah.
for Robert
So
Derrick.
my first question is on day one of Kemi's leadership, when criticising Labour on, say, for example, immigration, Kemi will be asked by the media and by the government her alternative policy solutions, because it's very easy to criticise. It's much harder to come up with alternatives. How should she answer, given that she has no policies to answer with? The second question is, one of the very few areas of policy that Kemi has commented on is regards to maternity pay, where she called for it to be cut, despite the
Yeah.
UK rate being one of the lowest in Europe. Given the Conservative Party is the party of the family, at least it should be, our collapsing birth rate and the financial strain on young families, can you defend Kemi's position on this, or will you call her out on it? And finally, if Robert wins, which job in the shadow cabinet should he give Kemi?
Okay.
So
Yes.
So
Okay. Answer that.
yeah. So firstly, was about she's shown already at the dispatch boxes. She holds Angela Rayner and that to account, and I think she'll run rings around Starmer. In fact, I know she will if she becomes leader of the opposition. But she's also said her style is going to be about being constructive opposition, not opposing for opposing's sake. And like I say, the policies will come in time and be ones what we'll all agree on, like the cabinet, the shadow cabinet will. For what was the second one?
The second one is Kemi
Called to cut
Badenoch
maternity pay.
actually want to cut. She
Oh,
talked
right.
about cutting maternity pay, despite UK having a low birth rate and low maternity pay in the first place.
This was
Ben suggests Conservative Party is the party of family and therefore shall support family via maternity pay. Would you defend Kemi Badenoch's stance on or statements on said policy,
well.
or would you stand with her?
But it's not a stance she has. It was something what was taken. She was going through various things about burdens on small business, and and it was something she mentioned in passing. She's clarified a view on it, and it's not, and that's not her policy at all. It's not. She hasn't said that's her stance. It's been taken. It's one of those things that's been cherry picked and removed out of context and pushed by the likes of Sky News and the Guardian, and these are media outlets that aren't exactly friendly to the Conservative Party, and I don't think they're really interested in them having a good leader. So if they targeting Kemi, there's probably a reason for that because it's been taken out of context. As for the shadow cabinet post, well, I'd like her to be prime minister, but okay, Chancellor of the Exchequer because that's she could work well in that role. She's got banking background and she's an engineer. She can help reform the treasury. Well, I know that's a big task, but she can do it.
I see.
But really,
Thank
we
you.
need her as prime
Thank
minister.
you. Right, this is your turn now, Jack Kenway Smith, on behalf of Kemi Badenoch, to ask your 3 questions. Be quick. Again,
course.
to you, Ben.
How can we guarantee that Robert Jenrick isn't going to be like the Conservative Starmer? That he's saying the things what he knows will excite the membership and carry him to victory. But then, what's to say that all of these these policies he's mentioned on immigration are definitely going to be in the next manifesto? And then, what's to say if they are in the next manifesto? What's to say that they'll definitely be delivered when in government? Because when we haven't dealt with the systemic problems of what they call the so-called blob and this bureaucratic class, so that's not been sorted out. How are we going to deliver all of these things? And another thing is, yes, we don't want to get into a position where run on all these things and then we realise we can't deliver them. So and how is he going to impose all his ideas on the rest of the party? Because
Jump to your second question,
a
please.
one-man band. That's my questions.
You asked 3
About how
questions
we
inside?
about how we deliver and how does he
That's
know
3
they're
questions.
workable? Yeah.
So, will they be in the manifesto? Will they be delivered? And can they be delivered? Right?
And what would he do if they're not delivered? What would he tell to the members and the British people?
Okay. So,
Yeah.
will that
So
in manifesto? Will that be delivered? Okay.
I'll try and be fairly quick for you, Jay. So
Okay.
this is about trust. This is about trust. Can we trust Robert Jerrick to deliver? Can we trust the Conservative Party to deliver? And ultimately, we have a really big challenge on our hands in restoring trust with voters in the Conservative Party, because for too many years we've had politicians who've talked a good game when it comes to broad principles, who have laid out a vision, but have not had the policies in order to get there and realize a vision. I actually think that the bigger risk, the far bigger risk, is having electing a leader that talks a good game about vision, about where you want to get to, but offers absolutely nothing in regards to how to get there. And so, will he deliver? Yes. Why will he deliver? Because he has the policies and because he has the plan. It's not a weakness, that's precisely his strength. When we look at Kemi Badenoch, we have somebody who's promising the moon with regards to outcomes, but nothing in regards to actually solid policy in order to realize those outcomes. So will he deliver? Absolutely he will. He's got the plan. A plan today is better than a promise of a plan tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's just because I realised he wasn't able to get Conservative councillors on
okay,
board with his
let-
white paper.
sorry.
So
Okay, thank you. Closing statement time, as Johnny is a busy man and he has a lot of things to do.
sure,
Can we
Yes,
all
then.
pay our respect afterwards? Closing
Definitely.
statement for 6 minutes. Now each candidate, a representative of the candidates, will have 3 minutes each to make their closing statement. They will round up what has been discussed and make the final say on why members should vote for their candidate. Let's start with Jack Kenway Smith.
Did you say 3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes. That'd be great.
Okay. So I'd like to say thank you for you, Jay, for hosting this, and thank you for Johnny being very patient in helping facilitate this debate and discussion, and thank you, Ben, as well for making the case for the candidates and campaign you're representing, and so. Question is about, we can look at historical parallels here where 1975, there's the parallel here between here and 1975 is that the party and the country are at crossroads. See, we acquired renewal in 1975. What we had been doing wasn't working. Needed a decisive change of direction and someone to deliver and get people on board with that. That leader back then was someone who was exceptional, who stood out. Kemi is no Margaret Thatcher. She's her own person, but she has an exceptional X factor, and she has delivered in the past. And she has the right stuff and necessary qualities to, which is how we bring him on board. Margaret Thatcher worked with people like Keith Joseph at the Centre for Policy Studies to come out with detailed plans about stepping stones, about the about what we do when we immediately come into government. We thought there was a lot of detailed thinking, and it wasn't just Thatcher's ideas being copied and pasted. Her ideas in her head being copied and pasted to the 1979 manifesto. It was a development of ideas and policies that to be put into practice in government. This is something what Kemi will do with policy commissions. We've done policy commissions before when we've been in opposition. In 2005, for instance, Kemi actually sat on one of these policy commissions. She knows what they're about. She knows how they can work. So it's about bringing things together. She stands out because her campaign's called Renewal 2030, but she'll be clear. She knows that we're. They say we're a broad church, but it's also about having clear principles, because she's recognised that that some said we were governing left, some said we were governing too left. She said Kemi's analysis is that we're governing like Labour, but we're speaking right and voters felt manipulated. This is about trust, and she can run back trust by knowing sure she's got workable policy and ones what the party can get behind when we hopefully get back into government.
Thank you, Jack, on behalf of Kemi Badenoch. Let's come with Ben Wood on behalf of Robert Jerrick. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you once again to our host, to Jay, to all those who have worked behind the scenes to make this happen, and to Jack for participating, and for all those who are listening. And I hope you found this discussion tonight informative. Kemi is a great Conservative. She is a great politician, and she is a great candidate. Someone the party is lucky to have, and who will play a key role in rebuilding our party and our journey back to power. What I fear, though, is that what Kemi is not is a leader. A leader doesn't dodge head-to-head debates. A leader does not sideline key policy decisions to Quango-inspired committees. Leadership requires a vision, yes, but it also requires a concrete plan to realise it. Keir Starmer needs to be held to account today, not tomorrow. Voters need to be reassured in our vision today, not tomorrow. Faith and credibility in the Conservative brand needs to be re-established today, not tomorrow. Infighting over policy is simply a luxury we cannot afford. Without a plan, the party will be dragged into civil war over policy. Policy will inevitably become muddled and the leadership rudderless. So instead, let's get on with the vital internal party reforms. Let's win back voter trust under an oven-ready deal. Let's secure a mandate not only for a bold and positive vision, but for the route to get there. And let's retire Nigel Farage, crush Ed Davey and the SNP, and defeat Keir Starmer, starting with the local elections in May and culminating with the general election in 2029 or sooner. I'm not just saying that as a soundbite. I genuinely believe it. Starmer is no Blair, and this disastrous government can be defeated. However, to bring that about, we need to rebuild the trust that we have lost. The conservative politicians eloquently providing platitudes but bereft of policies is what has brought us here. We must change. We must show that we are credible and serious. We must win back voters' trust with radical, cast-denying commitments like leaving the ECHR. And like a broken record, I shall finish by saying what I have said time and time again tonight. To do that, a vision alone is not enough. We need a concrete, bold plan with policies, not just platitudes. A plan today, not a promise of one tomorrow, is what Generic offers on your ballot paper. From illegal to legal immigration, from NHS to defence, from housing to taxation, time for internal infighting over policy is over. The time for a clear plan is now. Cap immigration, leave the ECHR, get Britain building, vote for Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Ben, on behalf of Robert Jenrick. Now, both representatives of leadership candidates have finished their closing statement. May I thank them again for their time for this debate. I hope our audiences will have a better picture of where each candidate stands, and for those members listening, on who they should vote as the next Conservative Party leader. I wish both representatives well and wish both candidates well, whoever received that job. Thank you, Johnny, again, and all the staff that made this debate possible for all the work they have done. I believe they deserve the best and the highest level of gratitude, as well as those in RBC Radio 1, who are streaming this debate. Thank you again for watching Spotlight on the RBC, the largest broadcasting service on Roblox. Follow RBC television and YouTube channel and join the RBC Discord server for our TV and radio services to catch up on the headlines both on Roblox and in real life. Goodbye and good night.
This is RBC Television.